For generations, meat has occupied a throne in our collective imagination. It appears at the center of holiday feasts, dominates the frames of advertisements promising vigor and vitality, and stands as a monument to prosperity in cultures across continents. The image persists: a thick cut on a dinner plate symbolizes not just sustenance but success, strength, the reward of a life well lived. Yet beneath this veneer of tradition and comfort lies a biological reality that many discover too late. Once the human body crosses the threshold of 60 years, something fundamental shifts. The digestive machinery that once processed animal protein with ease begins to slow and stumble. Gut bacteria populations evolve, metabolic pathways narrow, and what was once fuel becomes, in certain contexts, a quiet accelerant of decline. Inflammation takes root in arterial walls. Muscles paradoxically weaken despite abundant protein intake. The body, in essence, begins to speak a different language. The cruelest irony is that the danger often has little to do with the meat itself. Instead, it resides in the choices made before the first bite ever touches the tongue. 6 specific errors, each capable of transforming a nourishing meal into a biological liability, unfold in kitchens and dining rooms every single day. Some of these mistakes double the likelihood of cardiovascular catastrophe. Others generate chemical compounds so insidious that researchers have traced them to aggressive malignancies in elderly populations worldwide. The 6th mistake on the spectrum involves a deceptively simple oversight. When meat arrives on a plate unaccompanied by vegetables, the body loses access to critical counterbalances it desperately requires. Fiber vanishes from the equation. Antioxidants disappear. The plant-derived compounds that neutralize the acidic load and oxidative stress created by animal protein are simply absent, leaving internal systems to manage the surge of fats, cholesterol, and metabolic byproducts alone. Research published in a nutrition journal during the early months of the pandemic year revealed a striking pattern. Seniors who consumed meat-heavy meals devoid of adequate vegetable portions showed dramatically elevated levels of a particular inflammation marker in their bloodstream. This marker, a protein that rises in response to cellular stress, serves as an early warning system. When it climbs and stays elevated, blood vessels sustain damage over time. Arteries lose their elasticity. Even the delicate tissues at the back of the eye begin to deteriorate, setting the stage for the most common cause of vision loss in older adults. Consider the experience of a man named Charles, who at 71 years old had spent decades enjoying precisely cooked steaks and golden roasted chicken. His meals were never extravagant, never pulled from drive-through windows or processed food aisles. Most evenings, a single piece of bread accompanied his protein, and he considered this moderation. Yet his cholesterol numbers began an upward creep. His digestive system slowed to a crawl. After meals, his blood pressure would spike sharply, a phenomenon his physician eventually connected to the absence of fiber-rich foods on his plate. Without vegetables to provide that crucial dietary fiber, Charles's body absorbed the fats and iron from meat far too rapidly. This created what doctors describe as oxidative stress, a process akin to internal rusting where cells become damaged by unstable molecules. The solution required no medication, no dramatic lifestyle overhaul. For every portion of meat he consumed, Charles added 2 portions of vegetables. Leafy greens, crimson peppers, dense broccoli florets. Within months, his digestion normalized. Energy returned. His cholesterol descended without pharmaceutical intervention. The protective mechanism at work is elegant in its simplicity. Fiber physically binds to excess cholesterol in the digestive tract, escorting it out of the body before it can accumulate in arterial walls. Antioxidants neutralize the unstable molecules generated during the breakdown of animal protein. Minerals like magnesium and potassium, abundant in vegetables, counteract the acidic burden that meat places on kidneys and bones, a burden that becomes particularly problematic after 60 when these organs operate with less efficiency. The prescription is straightforward: vegetables should occupy at least half of any plate containing meat, and variety in color ensures a broad spectrum of protective compounds. This single adjustment extends protection beyond the cardiovascular system, preserving joint function, cognitive clarity, and visual acuity well into the 8th decade of life. The 5th mistake operates on an opposite principle. For years, conventional wisdom instructed health-conscious individuals to strip away all visible fat from their meat selections. Skinless chicken breast, the leanest possible ground beef, pork trimmed to near translucence. The assumption held that fat represented an unmitigated threat to heart health, something to be eliminated with surgical precision from every meal. But this aggressive avoidance of fat creates its own cascade of problems, particularly for aging bodies. Certain vitamins critical to survival dissolve only in fat, not water. Without dietary fat to carry them, vitamins designated by the letters A, D, E, and K cannot travel effectively from the digestive tract into the bloodstream and onward to cells throughout the body. A clinical study conducted in the late 20-teens discovered that older adults adhering to ultra-low-fat diets showed vitamin D levels reduced by nearly a third and vitamin E concentrations cut by almost half compared to peers with moderate fat intake. These deficiencies undermine bone density, weaken immune defenses, and compromise the intricate structures within the eye. Margaret, at 69, prided herself on disciplined eating habits. She purchased only the most aggressively lean cuts available at her grocery store, convinced she was protecting her heart with every selection. Yet fatigue began to settle over her like a heavy blanket. Her skin grew thin and prone to tearing. Most troubling, her vision began to fail in low-light conditions, a subtle change that gradually worsened. An eye specialist detected early stages of macular degeneration and inquired carefully about her dietary patterns. When he explained that her fat intake had fallen far below the threshold necessary for proper nutrient absorption, disbelief washed over her. The correction involved reintroducing modest amounts of naturally occurring fats. Salmon rich in omega-3 fatty acids. Small portions of grass-fed beef with its natural marbling intact. Olive oil-based marinades to dress her proteins. Within weeks, her energy levels climbed. Her skin regained resilience. The deterioration of her night vision ceased its progression. These fats perform essential work beyond vitamin transport. They maintain the integrity of cell membranes, regulate hormone production, and fuel the intricate operations of the brain. Eliminating them entirely from the diet creates silent deficiencies that manifest in unexpected ways. The principle here demands balance rather than elimination. Meat with moderate natural fat content, paired with vegetables and devoid of industrial processing or deep frying, provides the fuel that aging muscles, nervous systems, and sensory organs require to maintain function. After 60, the body cannot afford to be starved of these essential lipids, regardless of how virtuous their absence might appear on paper. The fourth mistake shifts attention from the meat itself to the manner of its preparation, specifically the temperature at which it cooks. Many who have spent decades mastering the grill believe that intense heat produces superior results. The searing hiss of flesh meeting scorching metal, the blackened char marks that stripe the surface, the smoke that billows upward carrying promises of flavor. These sensory signals suggest mastery, but they mask a dangerous chemical transformation occurring within the protein. When muscle tissue from any animal encounters temperatures that climb beyond moderate ranges, two categories of toxic compounds begin to form. The first, heterocyclic amines, emerge from the reaction between amino acids, sugars, and creatine at high heat. The second, advanced glycation end products, develop when proteins or fats combine with sugars under these extreme conditions. Both substances carry documented links to cellular damage. Heterocyclic amines interfere with the genetic code inside cells, creating mutations that can spawn malignancies. Advanced glycation end products stiffen blood vessels, trigger waves of inflammation throughout the body, and accelerate the progression of degenerative diseases. A study examining the relationship between cooking methods and cancer risk published in a journal dedicated to nutrition and oncology revealed that frequent consumption of meat cooked at very high temperatures increased the likelihood of certain malignancies in older populations by more than half. The risk climbed particularly high when the surface of the meat showed visible charring, that crispy blackened crust so many have learned to prize. Harold, at 72, had earned a reputation in his neighborhood as the undisputed master of the backyard barbecue. Every weekend without fail, smoke rose from his property, carrying the aroma of perfectly seared steaks and burgers cooked over roaring flames. He took pride in the ritual, in the technique, in the compliments from guests who praised his skill. Yet over years of these weekend feasts, his blood pressure began an inexorable climb. His knees ached with a persistence that no amount of rest could relieve. Medical tests revealed early warning signs of kidney dysfunction. When his physician asked detailed questions about dietary habits, Harold responded with confidence. He ate no processed foods, no convenience store snacks, no fast food meals. Everything came fresh from quality sources, prepared with his own hands. But the doctor explained that the preparation method itself was flooding his system with inflammatory compounds that damaged tissues silently, meal after meal. The excessive heat was creating substances his aging body could not effectively process or eliminate. Harold reluctantly adjusted his approach. He moved away from the fierce direct heat of the grill, embracing instead the gentle patience of slow roasting in an oven, the steady simmer of stews, the controlled warmth of baking. The change felt like a defeat at first, a surrender of his culinary identity. Yet within months, the chronic pain in his joints diminished noticeably. His blood pressure readings stabilized. The fatigue that had become his constant companion lifted gradually, replaced by energy he had not felt in years. Cooking meat at gentler temperatures preserves the delicate B vitamins and omega-3 fatty acids that high heat destroys. It also prevents the formation of those dangerous byproducts that accumulate in tissues over time. Adding acidic marinades before cooking, solutions containing vinegar or citrus juice or herb-infused oils, can reduce toxin formation by extraordinary margins, in some cases by 9/10 according to food science research. The goal is not the abandonment of flavor but rather its achievement through safer means. After 60, patience in the kitchen translates directly to longevity. The third mistake involves a category of meat products that occupy a distinct and troubling position on the danger spectrum. Processed and cured meats, the convenience items that fill deli counters and breakfast plates across the world, carry risks that extend far beyond their sodium content. These products undergo industrial treatment with chemical preservatives, compounds that grant them their characteristic pink hue and extended shelf life. Sodium nitrites and nitrates, the most common of these additives, transform inside the human digestive system into nitrosamines, substances with potent cancer-causing properties. The World Health Organization, after reviewing hundreds of studies spanning decades, placed processed meats in their highest risk category for carcinogenicity. They share this classification with tobacco smoke, a comparison that startles many who hear it for the first time. The evidence showed that consuming merely 50 grams daily, an amount equivalent to 2 slices of bacon or a modest serving of deli ham, increased colorectal cancer risk by 18%. For seniors whose digestive systems respond more slowly to damage and whose cellular repair mechanisms operate with diminished efficiency, this risk compounds with each passing year. A woman we encountered earlier, whose vision troubles led her to reintroduce healthy fats, had also maintained a morning ritual for years. Each dawn brought a cup of tea, a buttered roll, and 2 strips of bacon sizzling in her pan. She framed this as a small pleasure, hardly worth concern given its modest portion size. But the daily accumulation of processed meat took its toll. Her blood pressure climbed to dangerous levels. Arterial plaque hardened along vessel walls. Digestive discomfort emerged where none had existed before, a burning sensation that disrupted her sleep and appetite. When she finally eliminated the processed meats, replacing them with fresh turkey breast, wild-caught salmon, or simple eggs prepared without curing agents, the transformation unfolded swiftly. Within weeks, her blood pressure measurements dropped into safer ranges. The digestive pain receded. Energy that had slowly drained away over years began its gradual return. Beyond the chemical preservatives and their carcinogenic metabolites, processed meats deliver staggering amounts of sodium, often exceeding 1,200 milligrams in a single serving. This mineral load forces fluid retention, manifesting as swollen ankles and legs, and places enormous strain on the heart muscle as it works to pump blood through an expanded volume. The combination of excessive sodium, saturated fats, and industrial preservatives creates a triple assault on the aging cardiovascular system. The safest approach treats these products as rare indulgences rather than dietary staples. When circumstances lead to their consumption, pairing them with vegetables rich in antioxidants, spinach or bell peppers or tomatoes, can help mitigate some of the oxidative damage they inflict. But the fundamental principle remains clear: processed meats represent a compromise between convenience and health, and after 60, that compromise tilts increasingly toward danger. The second mistake shifts away from what is consumed toward what is conspicuously absent from the meal itself. Water, the most fundamental element of human survival, becomes critically important when protein-dense foods enter the digestive system. Meat contains concentrated levels of protein, and as the body dismantles these complex molecules into usable components, it generates nitrogen-containing waste products. Chief among these is urea, a compound that must be filtered from the bloodstream by the kidneys and expelled through urine. Without sufficient water to facilitate this filtration and elimination process, these waste products accumulate, triggering a cascade of problems. Dehydration intensifies. The kidneys labor under increasing strain. Uric acid, another byproduct of protein metabolism, can crystallize and deposit itself in joints, igniting the excruciating condition known as gout. Research examining kidney function in relation to dietary patterns found that higher protein consumption without adequate fluid intake significantly elevated markers of renal stress, particularly in individuals beyond their 60th year. The challenge compounds because aging naturally dulls the sensation of thirst. Seniors may not register the need for water until dehydration has already progressed to a dangerous stage. Robert, at 72, had constructed his diet around protein abundance, convinced it would preserve his muscle mass and physical strength through his later years. A substantial steak would anchor his evening meal, yet he rarely consumed more than a small glass of water alongside it. Over time, unusual symptoms began to manifest. Fatigue settled into his bones despite adequate sleep. His urine darkened to a concerning amber shade. Mild swelling appeared around his ankles, a puffiness that persisted through the day. Medical tests revealed elevated creatinine levels, a biochemical signal that his kidneys were struggling to process the metabolic load he was placing upon them. The remedy, though simple in concept, proved transformative in practice. Robert began drinking a full glass of water both before and after each meat-containing meal. He sipped herbal tea steadily throughout his waking hours, turning hydration into a conscious practice rather than an afterthought. Within 30 days, his energy resurged. Follow-up tests showed his kidney function improving measurably. Even his digestion, which had become sluggish and uncomfortable, began operating with renewed smoothness. Water serves multiple essential functions beyond waste elimination. The digestive process itself depends heavily on adequate fluids. Meat requires more time and enzymatic action to break down compared to most plant foods, and without sufficient moisture, this process slows dramatically. The result manifests as bloating, constipation, and impaired absorption of the very nutrients the meal was meant to provide. For seniors dealing with meat-based meals, the recommendation extends beyond general daily water intake to specific hydration connected to eating. 8 to 12 ounces of water should accompany these meals, supplemented by foods that carry their own moisture content such as cucumbers, tomatoes, or broths. Yet even with perfect hydration practices, with vegetables filling half the plate, with gentle cooking methods, and avoidance of processed options, one final mistake stands above all others in its capacity for immediate harm. The first and most dangerous error involves time itself, specifically the passage of time beyond safe storage limits. Meat that lingers too long in refrigeration or freezer storage can appear entirely normal to human senses while harboring bacterial populations capable of devastating consequences. Listeria monocytogenes, Salmonella, and Escherichia coli represent the primary threats. These pathogens can survive and in some cases multiply even under cold conditions that people assume provide complete protection. For seniors whose immune systems operate with diminished vigilance compared to younger years, even modest bacterial loads can trigger severe food poisoning, infections that spread into the bloodstream, or sepsis that threatens life itself. The Centers for Disease Control maintains statistics showing that adults over 65 face hospitalization from listeria infections at rates 10 times higher than younger populations. The particularly insidious quality of listeria is its ability to grow even at refrigerator temperatures, meaning cold storage alone offers no guarantee of safety. Eleanor, at 75, carried a deep aversion to waste. She had lived through times when nothing could be discarded carelessly, and these values persisted into her later years. She believed firmly that cooking meat to sufficient internal temperature would neutralize any potential contamination. One evening, she retrieved ground beef from her freezer, meat that had resided there for an indeterminate period. She could not recall the purchase date with certainty. The burgers she shaped looked unremarkable. They released no off-putting odors. The taste seemed perfectly acceptable. Within 24 hours, her world collapsed into acute suffering. Violent stomach cramps doubled her over. Vomiting and dizziness rendered her unable to stand without assistance. The hospital admission lasted 5 days as medical staff battled a salmonella infection that left her weakened for weeks beyond her discharge. Her physician later explained that while freezing halts bacterial reproduction, it does not destroy all microorganisms or neutralize the toxins some species produce before freezing occurs. The guidelines for safe meat storage are specific and non-negotiable for anyone wishing to avoid such outcomes. Fresh poultry demands use within 1 to 2 days of refrigeration. Red meat maintains safety for 3 to 5 days under proper cold storage. Frozen meats generally remain safe for 3 to 12 months depending on the specific cut and initial quality, but these windows assume proper freezing temperature and lack of thawing cycles. Every package should receive a date label at the moment of storage. Use-by dates printed on commercial packaging reflect safety considerations, not merely quality preferences. The calculus is stark: no meal justifies the risk of infection that could result in permanent organ damage or death. Meat possesses undeniable nutritional value. It delivers complete proteins, readily absorbable iron, B vitamins essential for neurological function, and other micronutrients that aging bodies require to maintain strength and resilience. Yet this same food can transform into a vector of harm when approached carelessly. The 6 mistakes detailed here represent the difference between nourishment and liability. They span from the compositional balance on the plate to the molecular changes induced by heat, from the industrial processing that introduces carcinogens to the hydration that enables proper metabolic function, culminating in the temporal discipline that prevents bacterial catastrophe. The path forward requires no dramatic renunciation, no abandonment of familiar foods or cultural traditions. It demands instead a mindful recalibration of how meat is selected, prepared, combined with other foods, and stored. When vegetables provide their protective compounds, when fats remain in moderate balance, when heat stays within safe ranges, when processing is minimal, when water flows abundantly, and when time limits are respected. Meat reclaims its role as a powerful ally in maintaining muscle mass, supporting immune defenses, and fueling the activities that make life worth living beyond 60. Every meal represents a choice that reverberates through years to come. The question is not whether to enjoy food, but whether to honor the body that must process it. Treating nutrition with the same careful attention given to any other aspect of health transforms eating from a passive habit into an active practice of self-preservation. For those willing to embrace these principles, meat becomes not a threat to be feared but a resource to be wielded wisely, supporting vitality well into the decades ahead.